Well, you say, Daniel, next team, it's AlphaTauri.
AlphaTauri. So,
Finishing 8th.
a very rocky year for AlphaTauri. Very poor start. Very strong end, though. A lot of positives, but also a lot of negatives as well.
A really big positive for me for AlphaTauri is Yuki's performances.
I think he's gotten better. One thing I like about Yuki, though, as I was mentioning with Joe has to get to that level where he can be the midfield performer.
Yeah.
I think Yuki went from very raw-paced guy.
Oh, God. Yuki.
Very raw, but
so hot-headed.
Hot-headed, but he's developed to the point where I think he's getting to that point.
He's getting better. You still see these hot-headed flashes like in Mexico.
Mexico, yeah.
Oh my God, that he was on for a phenomenal performance.
AlphaTauri were gonna.
Wasn't Yuki he started down in last as well?
Yeah.
He was on for a great performance there.
It was a mental race for him,
and then he just bottled it.
But I think Yuki's getting there. I think the positives. Yeah. Yuki, I think Liam Lawson has shown his worth as well.
God, yeah.
Very, very good driver.
Liam Lawson.
Incredible driver.
I think he's how many races he had? 3, 4?
Yeah.
Amazing. All of them were. And they weren't easy tracks.
No, impressive.
Yeah,
it was an impressive performance.
The Netherlands.
Netherlands.
It was his first time there as well.
Yeah.
At Suzuka. Qatar. Was he at Texas? Yeah, he was at Texas. Yeah, he did Texas.
No, he didn't. Daniel did.
No, he didn't.
Did he? No, Daniel came back for Texas.
Did he?
Pretty sure.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. Right, but this year,
it was definitely Qatar.
This is another issue. There's too many races. Can't keep up anymore.
Oh,
it's like it used to be like 17, 18 races a season, and you could pretty much count all of them on one hand. Well, not one hand, but like four hands.
Is it 23, 24?
Yeah.
This year.
24. That's 6 more than we were used to back in the day.
And I don't agree with all the track choices.
I can't keep up. I don't either. That's an issue for another podcast, though, I think.
No, we'll do that later on after this season review.
I think we could go into depth with that, though, to be fair. But either way, though, yeah, so Yuki and Liam. What do you think about Daniel? Do you think Daniel was the right choice? Okay, first question I'm going to ask you, right? 1, do you think it was the right move to replace Nick de Vries so early, given his record in Formula E and Formula 2? And second question, do you think it was the right choice to put Daniel Ricciardo in that seat? Or would you have brought another young driver in? For example, would you have given it straight to Liam Lawson?
Well, one, Red Bull are renowned for replacing drivers very quick. They don't think about what they do. Let's be honest. They just straight to the point. It's a tough one because I think you look at it in a case of they didn't just look at AlphaTauri, whereas they looked at their own performances Red Bull did this year, especially Perez. And I think Perez's poor performances is what gave Daniel an edge. Because I think Red Bull would be looking, if Daniel have a good year this year, to put Daniel back in the Red Bull. That's what I think that they were looking to do. Because I don't think Yuki is necessarily ready.
I agree.
And I think they know that. He's too hot-headed. Liam Lawson would not be ready. I think they want a driver ready to come in for Perez if he has another bad year.
Liam Lawson would have been another Albon Gasly situation.
Correct.
And Albon and Gasly have since proven that they are amazing drivers as well.
Yeah.
So
they don't want that. They want a driver who's experienced, who's quick, and the only driver out there that they could call upon was Ricciardo. And I don't think they're doing it in terms of would he fit AlphaTauri. I think they're doing it in get him some race time, put him in the Red Bull if Perez has
so what you're saying is you reckon they had Nick de Vries, because obviously he's like 26, isn't he? So he's very experienced.
Nick de Vries.
He's not a rookie.
He was very poor though.
Very poor. But so what you're saying is you reckon they put Nick de Vries in AlphaTauri to line him up in case Red Bull had Perez had a poor season this year for him to replace him in 2025. But since he was so poor, they had to do a quick switch.
No, I don't think they had that vision of Perez at all this year. Because he had a pretty good year for a first year in a Red Bull against Max.
2 years.
Well, 2 years. He had a pretty decent year.
2021 was a good year.
Yeah.
And 2022 was a good
2022 was a pretty decent year for Perez.
year. Yeah. He did what he was meant to do.
His expectations for this year, 2023, was supposed to be a lot better than what it was.
Finished second when...
He did
finish second.
He did end up finishing second in the championship.
But that was because every other driver was taking points off each other every weekend. Because the grid was so wishy-washy.
And a couple of FIA calls in terms of penalties and all of that. I mean,
we don't talk about that.
No.
But I think it speaks volumes that Alonso or Lewis could have beat Perez in the driver's
well, it got
standings
to a point when Lewis was about to overtake one in Texas before he got disqualified.
Then he had a little bit of a poor patch for a few races, and
well, I think Mercedes has just had a poor patch, didn't they?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, so Daniel, you reckon, is in there because they didn't want to put Liam in there.
I think they brought Daniel in for Nick De Vries. I didn't think they had a vision of having Nick De Vries and Yuki. I don't think they thought about bringing either of them to Red Bull.
Yeah,
for Perez, but I think when De Vries was poor, Perez was also dropping in form.
Yeah.
Because he started the season well. Max had 2 wins, Perez had 2 wins.
Yeah.
We thought, oh, you know what, Perez is doing that. And then he dropped in the next 4 races.
Yeah.
And that's when De Vries went.
Yeah.
And I think they saw Perez was dropping.
Fucking hell. Every time.
De Vries was not good enough in terms of performances. So they brought Daniel in and see what Daniel could do. And then obviously Daniel did something to his wrist and didn't get the races that he needed to do. So that's why we're in this situation of Perez stays in his seat.
So you reckon it was just it all lined up perfectly?
I think Red Bull are having a headache between Yuki, Perez, Daniel and Lawson.
It would make sense as well because what you're saying is like we got to a point where Nick was poor, they had to replace him.
Yeah.
But Perez was poor, so that means they needed to give another driver a chance to prove themselves to then maybe put them in a Red Bull. And the only person that could do that is Daniel.
Correct, because Lawson's
too inexperienced.
Exactly.
And they saw what happened with Albon and Gasly.
Yuki's too hot-headed.
Yeah.
So they're trying to avoid the mistakes that they've previously made.
Yeah.
But now Daniel's issue with his hand and his wrist put Lawson into a seat at AlphaTauri, and they've seen how good Lawson is, which then gave him a conundrum of 4 drivers, 3 seats.
Oh, it's so.
And Yuki performed on a level where you couldn't even fault him with the car that he was given as well.
What's crazy about this whole situation is you can't get rid of any of them. Like, despite how poor Perez was, he still finished second in the championship. He still has the capabilities to be that second driver that they need.
Well,
at the moment,
there is a stat that came out that Max has led more laps last year than Perez was in the top 10 in laps.
But still.
Yeah, but that Red Bull is arguably one of the best F1 cars there
ever. Yeah. Yeah.
It shouldn't have even been that close to the rest of the grid, and he was struggling to get to Q3.
Oh.
Like, if you're talking about poor seasons, I think Perez has to be up there.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. I think on our biggest flop, but they have got a conundrum.